Hello, good evening, and welcome to the War Room. This is day 28 of Russia's illegal incursion into Ukraine. And I swear to God, I'm going to get that right one of these days. That intro. And I got to get my Discord thing working again, too. Damn it. There we go. Now it all works. Anyway, we've got a lot of stories for you today. I thought it was going to be a slow news day, but we might be able to get through them pretty quickly. We'll see. Either way, I just thought I would go ahead and dispense with the intros. I have updated the scroller. It is correct to the date and the statistics. And what you might notice is there's another boat that got sunk. Woohoo! That's always cool. Let's see, what else do we have for you? There's been some more kidnappings. There has been what one can only assume is an incredibly high-level defection today. That should be pretty good. I noticed I started making the descriptor a little more vague. I just end it with "and much, much more," just because I don't want to clog up the whole description with a ton of information. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a reason to watch. Then again, you probably watch just to hear us rant and opine. Or maybe you just don't get the news like we do, and I can bring it to you in a nice, neat little bundled up package with a timeline. In case you're new to this show, I usually refer to the timeline by Central Standard Time, my time, but then I'll do my best to translate it for the local area that the story entails. So, for instance, I have stories that usually refer to Ukraine and Moscow time, which is the same time zone. So you'll hear me use that a lot. Sometimes I'll bring up the UK, Finland. Sometimes I will bring up like Romania or France, things like that. And one of these days I'm going to actually use Japan time, which I talked about it yesterday, and that there was supposed to be a meeting with the Japanese parliament from Vladimir Zelensky, because he has been a geopolitical phenom in terms of being able to reach out to the local dialect and history of the nation he's addressing. And I thought today was supposed to be his address to the Japanese parliament, which would have been it would have been a historical first. But I don't think it happened today. What ended up happening today was he spoke to French Parliament, and that's actually a big deal, and we will get into that as the show progresses. So anyway, before I start spoiling all the details, I'm going to go ahead and start pulling in my panelists. I only have two tonight. I don't know what happened to Night Strike. I think he's got the Gathering hangover or something. It's hard to say. And my college student is doing college student things, so I'm going to start my intro with the tradesman up in New England. Some of you might remember him on gun channels as Scott P79. If you are a regular on my Discord server, which there is a link to join it in the description below if you'd like to join, you would recognize him as Scott P79. I have him on the server as Scottish Naya, like the vodka, but I just messed with it. And all our names are in Cyrillic right now, so you'll have to sort of recognize us by avatar. So anyway, there he is. Good evening to you, sir. I have to move over to panel view now. And my other panelist is, I believe, in Missouri. And he finally got to make one of these. Like, he's trying to make them, but, you know, he's got a different schedule than most of us. So anyway, this is Mr. F&H. And if my other panelists decide to show up throughout the evening, I'll just have to keep an eye on it. I'll just drag them in accordingly. So it's not the end of the world. We'll get through this. It's going to be fine. So let's see. Let's see, Shady Hill. I've got the Outlaw Hatfield, and I've got Terry Scherer out there, and the Finest of Apes. So we do have the potential for good discussion in the YouTube side chat. Sorry, I'm a little addle-brained right now. I finally posted pictures of my Yorkshire puppies that are for sale, and I did not expect to get so many freaking replies this quickly. because I've tried to sell cars and all sorts of crap on Craigslist before, and it's a circus. But because I live in the fourth largest city in the country, it actually works here. You just have to weed through all the bullshit. Um, so I got 3 dogs. I've got like 22 replies so far. Maybe I'll be free of 3 dogs by the end of the week, and maybe I'll even get to order my Polish WBP Fox AK at the end of the week. Wouldn't that be nice? Hmm.
You know, as soon as you order that, the RPK is going to come back in stock, right?
Yes, but you see, if I sell the puppies, all 3 of them, right, and they're off and they're on their way, then I have the money for both, so it won't matter. And then I am done for the year, at least for now, because that would have been 5 guns in 4 months.
And about $6,000.
No. Oh God, no. No, I'm already up close to $6,000 with the 3 I bought. 8,800, something like that. Yeah.
Jesus.
Enough. Like, I need to start saving money for the truck. So, anyway, like I was saying, today's day 28. We do have a lot of stuff to get through, so I'm going to try, in the interest of my sanity and your time, to try to get through this faster than 2 hours. So it's not that I don't care, it's just I want to move things along because all of you have things to do. So my first story today comes out from Ukraine, Kiev, Chernobyl, and the story was right after we ended the last show, so it was about 12:05 my time, midnight, and that makes it about 7 a.m., which is dawn in the Ukraine, and that's usually when people start to poke out of their little hidey holes and start to take into account the night's devastation. Because for those of you that might be either new to this or unfamiliar, the Russian Air Force becomes incredibly active between dusk to dawn, so throughout the night hours. I guess they have more sophisticated FLIR and night vision compared to the infantry, who seem to be absolutely green and completely clueless on how to use it, or they just have crap that doesn't work, or they just don't have it. So they have become a little more brazen with their attacks at night, but that's only because they're near larger cities now that they're trying to encircle, and those cities have good lighting, so they actually can work a little bit more effectively at night than they used to when they were taking little villages and hamlets, around the border of Russia. So that helps in their favor quite a bit. But you're going to notice the casualty list down there, and it's getting pretty eye-popping, to say the least. And the College of War actually released a statistic that you take the KIA times 3, and that's usually your actual casualty number with wounded or defections or people who walk away from their post. So it's a ratio of about 3-to-1 KIA to everything else in the casualty numbers, which would indicate that the Russian military, with their original force of almost 155,000, have already lost a third of their entire fighting force. Holy shit. In 28 days. Wow.
They've already taken more casualties than they took in, 14 years in Afghanistan?
Oh, we'll get there. We'll definitely get there. So anyway, my first story of the day, Russian troops destroyed a laboratory that helped improve management of radioactive waste at Chernobyl's nuclear power plant. This came from the Ukrainian government directly. The laboratory contained highly active samples and samples of radionuclides that are now in the hands of the enemy, which we hope will harm itself and not the civilized world. So basically they got nuclear waste. And the Ukrainian government's like, I hope it makes you sick. So they're not too off for that, right? Anyway, so
No,
the Ukrainian
but
state
they probably
agency,
didn't tell them what they were handling.
correct, because they're just infantry and most of them are conscripts.
Yep.
So they were just like, hey, look, this one's glowing, man. Anyway, um, the Ukrainian state agency responsible for the Chernobyl exclusion zone released all this information in their statement today. The laboratory was built in 2016 with the support of the European Commission at a cost of 6 million euros. Forest fires also had broken out near the plant on Monday, causing concerns that it would help spread radiation. What are they, trying to do an impression of California? What the hell? Russia took control of the plant soon after invading a month ago. So, you got Russians doing Russian things. You have a forest fire that sprung up in the area, a radioactive forest, that is. And then the Russians destroyed a laboratory containing nuclear waste samples. Like, what are they trying to become super mutants? Like, is this really becoming Fallout or what? Anyway,
They're trying.
they're trying. All right, so my next picture does come with, or sorry, my next story does come with a picture, and here you go. Ukrainian president, oh sorry, 7:12 a.m. Ukrainian time. So he gets up early. Probably never goes to bed because this man, I swear to God, looks like he's aged 10 years and 28 days. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky issued a statement ahead of this week's NATO and G7 summits. As of today, there are about 100,000 people in the city, Mariupol. Now, bear in mind, Mariupol was once a city of 450,000 people. Now he says that there's 100,000, and they're currently living in inhumane conditions, in a complete blockade. No food, no water, no medicine. Under constant shelling, under constant bombing, he says. For more than a week now, we've been trying to organize and stabilize humanitarian corridors for Mariupol residents. And almost all our attempts, unfortunately, have been disrupted by the Russian occupiers, by shelling or by deliberate terror. He continued, we continue to work at various levels to force Russia to peace, to the end of this brutal war. Ukrainian representatives are working on negotiations, which continue virtually every day, but it's very difficult, sometimes even scandalous. But step by step, we're trying to move forward. We will work, we will fight in any way we can, until the end, bravely and openly, at all of these sites, with full energy. This guy doesn't quit is not in his vocabulary. And what's really strange to me is I have a childhood friend who I may have been involved with when we were much younger, but I always had a thing for her sister. And her sister is quite available, and she's quite fascinated with the way I think, at least lately. And so up until the week in review shows, she was on board. Up until the E Honda style conspiracy theories that I would love to put up there, she was like a kid in a candy store. On this particular conflict, on this particular subject, she is completely on the wrong side of this, and it's infuriating to me because she is so hard-headed and adamant about her opinion on this. She has this theory that the Ukrainian war, and it's my fault. I'm sure it's my fault because I always tell people this all the time, but it was so refreshing to meet somebody who already thinks like this. So it was just me repeating. It was like a soundboard, right? And I'd said, anytime you see a story in the mainstream media in the United States, you have to take it with a grain of salt and ask yourself, now what are they trying to distract me from to keep my focus on this while they're doing something in the shadows behind me with other stories that aren't being covered? She has this theory that the Ukrainian conflict is a giant web of conspiracy to fence money into interest groups here in the States. And I just don't see it. I don't believe it. Because, first of all, that requires a level of intelligence that President Biden just doesn't have. Nor does his vice president. Nor does anybody in his staff. That requires a higher level of thinking. And to be perfectly honest, I'm surprised these people even remember to fucking breathe in the morning. I don't figure it out. I can't figure it out. And I don't know why she's so adamant about this. It just drives me nuts. To the point where I told her older sister that I was once involved with. I was like, I just have to let you know that I can't talk to your sister right now because she is so on the wrong side of this, and I just don't want to rip her head off. She's like, I get it. She's like, I don't understand why she thinks that way either. They live together, by the way. So anyway, that's that. Sorry, I didn't mean to drag that in there, but I remember this story, and then I remember her stance on it, and I was just like, shut up, woman. Anyway, moving on. I have a couple of stories that are a series of tweets, so bear with me because I'll probably just read them to you, maybe because you haven't seen them. This one came at 2:17 a.m. my time, which fast forward is 9:17 a.m. in Latvia. But before I read it, I want to read the comments here. We both know that you need FEV in addition to radiation for super mutants. Rads alone is just ghouls. Well, okay. I'm going to work off the finest of apes comment here. They have radiation. Check. They also have the Russians saying that the United States and the Ukrainians were working on biological weapons. There's your FEV. Anyway. So this came from Latvia. Oh. Oops. Oh, I remember. Sorry. I forgot to write the translation down for you. So just bear with me. I'm going to have to read this out very slowly. Essentially what this says is that the refugees of Ukraine, to the tune of 5,000 people, have been granted work visas and right to work status in the nation of Latvia. So basically what they're doing is they're dealing them a solid. I think that what Latvia is doing is they're emulating a program that Moldova did since the beginning of this. So Moldova took in, I think it was 9,000 refugees very early on. And, no, sorry, 20,000 refugees very early on. And what they said is we have jobs, we have industry, we have schools, we have everything you need, and we have tons of openings because our country is so poor that a quarter of our population had mass exodus over the last couple of years. And we have, I think they said 5,000 IT jobs available. Just come and take them. So when the Ukrainian refugees were coming across, they were met by basically headhunters and job scouts. And they were like, look, we're sorry about what happened to your country, but you're welcome here, and we would love to have you. And here's what we have to offer. Just come and take it, right? And a lot of people did. And they were like, we'll put your kids in our school program, everything. Just whatever you need, we got you. Because they're desperate to get talent into their workforce that has tons of openings so they can quit being the poorest country in the area, right? I mean, what better way to... You didn't even have to, like, look for these people. They were just lined right up, right? So I think Latvia pulled a similar thing. I would assume that Poland has attempted to do a similar thing. Unfortunately, because they have so many people in the country, to the tune of, I think, 2.3 million now, they just don't have the openings. So a lot of people are being turned away, or at least Poland is saying, look, you're welcome to come here. We'll do what we can. Our resources are thin, but you should definitely start considering making arrangements for other nations or trying to find family in other countries that we can help you get to. Just because there's just not enough, right? And they're not upset about it. Like they've been the most hospitable that you could expect them to be, given the situation. But anyway, Latvia is doing a solid, and they are a NATO nation, so that kind of helps too. The Russians can't fire upon those people crossing over. Article 5. Moving on.
You don't think they would?
Well, we'll see when they do.
Mm-hmm.
So a few minutes later, it's about 9:20 a.m., and we're back in Ukraine. They're in the same time zone. And it has this photo that came out. Sorry, this one. That was actually part of a video, but I stopped it right at the part that mattered because that middle section there is where the bridge used to sit, the paved part. And it says Russian forces bombed a road bridge which connected Chernayev to Kiev. Translation of that tweet is Russian occupiers bombed a road bridge across the Desna, that river, which connected Chernayev with Kiev. The bridge was used by evacuation flights from Chernayev, and humanitarian aid was coming through here to be delivered to the city. Russia has reached a point where infrastructure didn't matter. They went on to terror attacks by attacking civilian populations. Then they started attacking the humanitarian corridors, and now they're bombing the bridges in the western part of the country to prevent refugees from leaving or humanitarian aid from entering. These are some sick fucking people. Moving on. We're getting through this. We're going to get through this pretty quickly, I think. About an hour later, and I have this, which Scott touched on very early. Russian armed forces losses have now surpassed the levels of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Now, remember how long Russia was in Afghanistan before we went in there? And you know how long we were there. The General Staff of Ukraine's Armed Forces released the information claiming that as of March 22nd, yesterday, the Russian military sustained 15,300 casualties over the 10 years of USS war against Afghanistan, which the reported number was 15,051. They've lost more soldiers in 27 days, because today's 28, so that's based on 27 days, than they lost in 10 years in Afghanistan. Okay, now, one could argue, we can do the Obadiah thing. Tony Stark built this in a cave with scraps. Well, okay. The Russians were fighting Bedouins with clapped out Martini Henry rifles in caves with scraps, right? Maybe that's why it took so long? No. Maybe the Ukrainian, military technology is superior and they're more efficient killers? Maybe. It doesn't matter. It's still staggering. Not even a full calendar month, and they've lost more than they did in 10 years. And back then, they were the scary Soviet Union. They were the Cold War boogeyman.
All the resources.
Yeah, they were the Cold War boogeyman. 90 cents out of every dollar was spent on military shit. And they lost that many in 10 years. And now they've got a quarter of the world's billionaires and oligarchs? And they're still getting clapped in 27 days. Okay. Man, you guys got soft.
Oh, the U.S. isn't very hard either, though, anymore.
No. We should just send an army of Leah Thomases. That'll solve everything. The Russians are going to be like, finally they bring the women. Boy, she's a tall one.
Surprise on Russians.
Yeah, and then they brought the tall one. And then they reach down in their pants and be like, what the fuck is this? What is this? All right, moving on. About an hour
Russia
later.
does not have gays.
No. 11:22 a.m. Ukrainian time. And this was part of the story I put in the description today. I even called this photo Top Gun. Bam! That's a great shot, isn't it? Ukrainian forces had a red banner day yesterday. They reported to have shot down 6 Russian planes. The translation of that tweet. The command of the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reports that during the day, March 22nd, yesterday, they had shot down 6 enemy planes, 5 cruise missiles intercepted, 5 UAVs, which is always a good thing, and 1 enemy helicopter. In a single day, they took out all that. Now, for those of you who watch this every day, you see the loss figures at the bottom of the screen, and you notice like the planes didn't move very much, the helicopters didn't really move very much, and the UAVs didn't move very much. They have now. Look at those numbers. They have shot the hell up. They're getting busy. They're getting better. And did I touch on that yesterday? I don't know if I did. Did we talk about the S-300s yesterday?
Yeah.
And then where they came from and how we got them?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They're getting better with that. Plus, there's a very sort of dark room full of smoke deal going on with Turkey right now. And I think, like, I'll let the Admiral talk about this tomorrow at the Pentagon briefing, but I think they're working on a deal to get S-400s from Turkey, which are even more advanced with even better range. So we'll have to wait for John Kirby to talk about that, which I'm sure he will. Right now, he's just like, I can't talk about intelligence things right now. That's like his famous line. All right, let's move on. A couple hours go by. It's now 1:24 after lunchtime in Ukraine. And I just put the battle map up here. So that's the battle map update. And it says, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky says Russia's military has captured rescue workers and bus drivers trying to deliver humanitarian aid to the besieged city of Mariupol. We are trying to organize stable humanitarian corridors for Mariupol residents, but in almost all of our attempts, unfortunately, they've been foiled by Russian occupiers, either by shelling or deliberate terror. So that's kind of the quote from earlier. Zelensky said this on his evening address Tuesday night. He does it every night. Adding that the workers were detained by Russia along a route that had been agreed upon well ahead of time. Deputy Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk said the Russians had seized 11 bus drivers and 4 rescue workers along with all of their vehicles, but she said that their fate was unknown. I wonder if those guys are in the same place the 15,000 protesters that were arrested by Oman and Sober in Moscow and St. Petersburg. I wonder if they're all in the same place now, which is probably just a shallow grave, unfortunately, because that's Russians doing Russian things. One thing they're not doing, they're not shipping my Spetsnaz uniform, because it's still not here. Kind of annoying. Anyway, let's move on. Now this story just drips with the word audacity. It really does. So here's the picture. And it was 1:28 p.m. Moscow time. Russia's President Vladimir Putin plans to attend the G20 summit at the end of October. The country's ambassador to Indonesia said, because I guess that's where they're hosting it, while calling the West's reaction to the war in Ukraine disproportional. The summit is scheduled to be held in Bali, Indonesia at the end of October. Not only G20, many organizations are trying to expel Russia. This came from Russian Ambassador Lyudmila Vorobyeva. I actually got that one right. Said that in a press conference in Jakarta. The reaction of the West to the war in Ukraine is absolutely disproportional. Right. So, just for some history, this is the G20, right? 20 nations are involved. They have like this, think of it as South by Southwest for world leaders, right? And they want to kick Russia out of it. Which people are like, oh, well, yeah, it sounds like a good idea, right? This wouldn't be the first time. Putin was expelled from the G8 back in 2014 when it was only 8 countries. They kicked his ass out of that. You know what happened in 2014 to get him kicked out? Scott?
Let me take a guess.
Go ahead.
He invaded Crimea?
Yes! Right after he annexed Crimea, he was kicked out of the G8. Got it. You nailed it. Good job. So yeah, this wouldn't be the first time. What I want to know is, if you kicked him out back then, and he didn't give back Crimea, why the fuck did you let him back in? What the hell's the matter with you people? That's not how punishment works. You punish them, you leave them punished. If they don't learn, you keep them punished. He didn't learn. Now he's worse. Anyway, moving on. Finape was saying that, to be fair, the Afghani people weren't as near peer as Ukrainians. Oh. I'm gonna reference a movie, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you watch it. It's called The Beast of War, and it's about Russia's incursion into Afghanistan. I think it was 1992 when that came out. The major star in that movie was George Dzunda, which, if you don't know who that is, he was in CSI Las Vegas. He played the cop, not the CSI guys. Anyway, he was the main dude in The Beast of War. And you're right, the Afghan people weren't as technologically advanced, but no one can ever discount their fighting spirit. Like, those people are... I think the word warrior gets thrown around a little too much, but those people truly are. I mean, they'll go to war with whatever they can get their hands on, including rocks if they have to. What was that other movie, like 12 Strong or something like that? Right? That was the oh, what was his name? The guy who played Thor.
Hemsworth?
Yeah, Chris Hemsworth. He was in, I think it was 12 Strong. That has a really good sort of look into the abilities of the Afghani people too. Pretty good. I mean, I get what you're saying though. Technologically, they're a little behind because they don't have like the big cities and stuff, so they don't have like the latest and greatest tech. I guess that would be a good way to put it. Maybe their connectivity isn't as good, but in terms of like the guys you need to fight your battles for you, I mean, there's a reason why Putin's calling on Syrians right now to come help him, because they're hardy people. They're very good at contingency planning too. Anyway, let me move on. All right, so we're going to fast forward again, about an hour. And it's about 2:30 in Poland. And Mariusz Kaminski, the Minister of the Interior and Administration in Poland, said Wednesday that his country, it was probably his country, I typoed, that his country has expelled 45 Russian spies pretending to be diplomats. What an insult, right? They were diplomats. It's just he was just like, you dirty Slav scum. That's kind of the same thing. He was like, no, I expelled 45 Russian spies pretending to be diplomats. With full consistency and determination, we're breaking up all the agencies of the Russian secret services in our country. Like, he wasn't done insulting them. Poland's internal security agency also reported Wednesday that it had detained a civilian who had access to Warsaw City archives over suspicions of spying for Russian secret services, according to the Associated Press. Given the nature of the documents kept by those units, the activity of the suspect posed a threat to both internal and external security of Poland. They caught a guy with the plans of the city, structurally. I wonder if Poland has a standard punishment for spies like we used to have, but we don't have the guts to actually enforce anymore.
Oh, I'm pretty sure they do.
Has that guy been put up against a wall and shot yet? Or have they not beaten the truth out of him long enough? Probably that, right? Probably that.
Probably.
Hey, maybe they'll get that new SCOTUS nominee to go and defend that guy so they don't kill him.
So maybe she won't come back, too.
Sorry, that was a low blow, I know. All right, fast forward again. And now we are... Well, I just got up, actually. It's only 8:30 a.m. for me. I was up for like half an hour, but Anyway, it's usually when I get up, right? Banker's hours. 3:30 p.m. Moscow time, though. So we're going back to Russia. And I have a picture of this guy, who almost looks like a Russian version of Craig Sager, who died a few years ago of leukemia. Anyway, if you don't know who this guy is, relax, I'll tell you. Russian government official Anatoly Chubey, I think it's Chubey and the S is silence, stepped down from his position in the highest level display of opposition to President Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. It was reported that Chubey, age 66, fled the country after resigning his role in protest. But it wasn't exactly clear why he decided to leave. So rumors came out about him defecting. He was the... Okay, it's still here. Okay, I thought I deleted this part of it. Chubey reportedly hung up the phone when he was asked to comment on the matter because Reuters called his office before he had left the country and said, "So why are you leaving?" And he was like, "Click." His role was labeled as special envoy, specifically regarding climate and sustainable development. This appears to be a small title, but he has supported and assisted Putin for decades. He first served as deputy prime minister under Boris Yeltsin before transition. Yeah, this guy's got the credentials, right? Before transitioning to Kremlin chief of staff near the end of Yeltsin's tenure. But it was his work as an economic reformer with Putin that would create a truly lasting impression on the privatization of Russia's industries. Chubey would also go on to hold a number of top-level positions at various state companies, including RAO Unified Energy Systems of Russia. If you needed a mole, or a narc, or an insider, with all the gritty little details of how Russia does Russian things, this is your guy. So now everybody is frantically looking for him, because he quit in protest and left Moscow. He was like, "Peace, I'm done. I'm not going to be a part of this anymore," right? So the question is, where's he going and who's he going to help? Because this guy is a treasure trove of intel. He's probably on a plane already headed to Gitmo. Just saying. We have guys. We have guys, right? We got the dudes.
I'm pretty sure there's CIA black sites in Europe somewhere.
So you're saying Jason Bourne has him?
Basically.
It's fine. Whatever. As long as he doesn't end up in some shitty Slav SUV that falls off a bridge and this guy drowns and Jason Bourne feels sad that he lost his girl. Plot clash. Okay. Let's see. Afghanistan got U.S. munitions also. Yes, they did. They did. Did we get... Wait, are you talking about when they repelled the Russians? I think you'd be right either way. We did arm the Afghanis when Russia was messing with them, right? Yes, no, maybe. I don't know. I haven't dug too deep into that conflict, to be perfectly honest. I just know that Russia wanted it, Russia left with their tail between their legs. Like, there used to be a saying that Afghanistan is where empires go to die.
Go to die.
Yeah. And it's true. I mean, we spent 20 years there, and look what happened to us.
The British,
the Russians, the Romans. There's another big one. What's the Turks? I don't remember. Maybe the Mongols.
Well, the Romans basically did control it. Because they literally just slaughtered anybody that said no.
They didn't put them on a cross with iron nails.
They may have done that too.
Yeah. I mean, they're pretty good at that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they take over saying, yeah, this religion, this is ours now.
Oh, there was Hannibal.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. It's the same time. It's still 8:30 my time, and I got a second story. And this is 2:30 p.m. So it seems like we're going backwards, but it's not. It's just a different time zone. It's 2:30 p.m. in Brussels, and I have this photo for you of that metrosexual weenie. And it says NATO Security General Jens Stoltenberg. This guy is on my shit list. I don't like him. Said Wednesday ahead of a key summit in Brussels that he expects world leaders will agree to strengthen NATO's posture in all domains, with major increases to our forces in the eastern part of the alliance, on land, in the air, and at sea. The first step is the deployment of 4 new NATO battle groups in Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, and Slovakia. Along with our existing forces in the Baltic countries and Poland, this means we will have 8 multinational NATO battle groups, all along the eastern flank from the Baltic to the Black Sea. We face a new reality for our security, so we must reset our deterrence and defense for the longer term. He's shoring up the defenses along the eastern flank. It stops just short of Ukraine. So what he's doing is he's building up an audience of 8 multinational battle groups to essentially have a front row seat to the slow death of Ukraine. But if you cross that line, then you got to deal with all these guys, right? Here's the other problem. Russia has the capability of firing ballistic missiles from the Caspian Sea, which they still fully control, which is even further east than the Black Sea. So it doesn't matter to Russia how many armies you put along the eastern flank, because it's armies and infantry. Ballistic missiles can vaporize armies of infantry, especially if they're those Kinset dagger missiles or whatever. I don't know how well those things are guided. And I did get something wrong about that, by the way. I need to retract something. It was used twice. Sunday? I think it was Sunday. But the 2 missiles that were fired weren't fired at the same target, which means that depot that went up was destroyed by one of those missiles, which is shocking. The other one hit another city completely, and they don't really talk too much about the damage of that one. The other thing that I kind of sort of balked on, which I will admit, the nuclear weapon that you can attach to the Dagger missile has a 500 kiloton warhead. That's a small missile, or that's a small nuclear weapon. When they talk about tactical nuclear weapons, that's exactly what they're talking about. I thought Hiroshima was 15 kilotons. No, it was 15 megatons. I got that totally wrong, so my apologies for getting the numbers wrong. Kiloton, think in the hundreds of thousands of pounds. Megaton, you have to think in the millions of pounds. Much different. So, just wanted to get that out of the way. I don't want to be CNN. I just thought I would go ahead and get that out and, correct the record, because once I realized the size disparity, I was like, oh, this is the tactical nuclear weapons they've been talking about. Apparently Russia has over 7,000 of them. The big ones, I don't know. I don't know that number. But the small ones, I think they said it was over 7,000. So that is pretty nasty. I'm sure one would devastate a city pretty badly. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, so it's still around the same time. At 9:32 Eastern Standard Time. So only 2 minutes have passed between the 2 stories I just shared with you. I gotta put a picture up, sorry. There you go. Good news, he didn't fall up the stairs this time. President Biden is currently traveling to Brussels, Belgium, ahead of a NATO summit there Thursday, where world leaders will discuss the ongoing war with Ukraine. Now, I just want to preface this. This was what I wrote at 8:32 a.m. he had landed in Brussels just before I left work today, which would have been around 9:40ish local time in Brussels. And I was like, wow, he left at 9:32 my time when I left, and it was 9:32 p.m. when he got there. I was like, that can't be a 12-hour flight. Well, duh, I forgot the 6-hour time difference, so it was a 6-hour flight. My bad. Anyway, where did I leave off? Biden will be holding meetings with our NATO allies, G7 leaders, and European Union leaders to discuss international efforts to support Ukraine and impose severe and unprecedented costs on Russia for its invasion. This is from a White House statement earlier in the week. From Jen Psaki, who couldn't go on the trip because she got the Rona for the second time. Aww. Gingers have no souls, but boy, are they contagious people. Sorry, being a jerk. Anyway, Biden will then travel to Poland Friday for a meeting with its president, Andrzej Duda. Poland has been facing the brunt of the humanitarian crisis developing in Europe during the war in Ukraine. Duh. The United Nations estimate that more than 2 million people have sought refuge within its borders after fleeing Ukraine. I believe that number is 2.3 million in just Poland alone. But I haven't gotten an update for that, so take it with a grain of salt. I will have an update by the end of the week, though. They will update that figure, I'm sure. Just not today. Okay. So a little over an hour and a half goes by. And now it's curfew time, essentially. The old curfew. It's about 5 o'clock, 5:12. Oh, it was kiloton range. Okay. No, I'm glad you said that. I thought I got it grossly off. Okay, so the finest of apes says Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Fat Man and Little Boy, were 10 to 20 kiloton. So those were, wow. Okay, so if those were tactical nukes, because you got to remember, the warhead that the Dagger missile can carry is 1,100 pounds. Fat Man was like 30,000 pounds. It was way bigger, right? It was huge. It took a B-29 that was modified to carry it. Either way. Okay, so I'm getting a ballpark of what size this weapon is. If that was only 20 kilotons, and this thing has 500 kilotons and it only weighs 1,100 pounds, good God, has machining and tolerances gotten so good that they can make this weapon that small? And I'm not saying it's not possible, because if you look at what the first nuclear reactor looks like, and then you look at what's one on a Seawolf that's about the size of a phone booth, you're like, okay, yeah, they can do that. Gunpowder for you asks what she missed.
Well, you're all forgetting that they went from thermonuclear devices to hydrogen-based devices, which made them 10 times as powerful.
Well, no, I'd probably say they went from uranium to plutonium to something else, because the new one's called something else. Oh, look, they're filing in.
The new ones are all based on hydrogen bombs.
Right, but the isotope is something else. I know what you're saying. It's just it's some fancy modified version.
Plutonium 230, uranium 239.
No, I think you're right the first time. I think it was plutonium core. Something much more heavier.
Well, uranium is natural. Plutonium is manufactured. It's not naturally occurring.
Yeah, like the last 30 elements on the periodic table are all manufactured.
Yeah.
Looks like there must have been a show that ended because a bunch of other people just showed up. So good evening to Gunpowder Beauty and DJ Play Nice and whoever else is filing in. What you missed is Russians doing Russian things. But there was a very high-level defection. I'm sure you'll probably catch it.
Well, we don't know.
Well, there is. We just don't know where he defected to yet.
We don't know if he's defected or if Putin had him offed.
Oh, no. He left on his own accord. He fielded phone calls and interviews before he left. I mean, that's kind of cool. But he didn't answer certain questions.
Gave him the option, or you make it look like you're leaving of your own free will, and I won't kill your family.
Nah, he'll pop up somewhere. I'm sure of it. He'll pop up somewhere. Anyway.
China.
I was gonna say he'd pop up at the G7 meeting. To be honest, that'd be funny. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, so this was the story that I wasn't sure was going to happen today. I thought they were supposed to go speak to. I thought Zelensky was supposed to speak to Japan today, but he didn't. He spoke to France.
No, he did Japan.
Did he? Okay, so they didn't give me the details of that, but I got this one. So there's the picture, and this was at 5:12 Ukrainian time. So this would have happened just before like his regular typical curfew in Kiev. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky told France's parliament Wednesday that the country could lead a new European order following Ukraine's war with Russia. We need to think now of how we want to live after the war. We need guarantees, Zelensky says. And for these guarantees to be stable and to make sure war like this, the one that we're having right now, will never happen again. We need a new security system in which maybe France can take the lead on. Wow. That's flattering, right? He's talking to the French parliament, and he's like, yeah, you guys could be like, you could be the tip of the spear, you know? It's like, you guys used to be brave fighters in the Franco-Prussian wars and things, and then you developed this cheese-eating surrender monkey reputation of bad memes and jokes for like a decade or for a generation, and now you could be the tip of the spear for a new Euro world order, right? Wow, like that's, think of the boner that Macron got just getting flattered like that, right? Geopolitical boner, that is. Anyway.
Well, it may have had something to do about, guns that were only shot once and then dropped.
Yeah, okay. Zelensky also said Russia's military does not distinguish different buildings. They just destroy everything. They burn food supplies and medical supplies, as well as universities. They do not take into account the concepts of war crimes, he says. They only bring terror to my country. That's true. Okay, so the finest of apes is working on bombs for us. Fat Man was a plutonium implosion bomb. Correct. That's where it had the core in the middle, and it had all the little pieces on the outside, and they fired in, much like the thermobaric bombs do, to create an explosion out. Little Boy was a gun-type uranium. It had like a bullet that fired into it. I think that's what you were saying. Both were fission devices. Hydrogen and fusion bombs are the same thing. There you go. Thank you for correcting the record, or setting it. Okay, let's move on. We're probably going to make this in just a little over an hour. Cool. So I won't keep you guys too busy. And about another hour goes by, and it's about 6 o'clock in Belarus. About a quarter after, actually. And I have this picture. You might remember this young lady from before. What's really funny is I took the screenshot of the video last time, and then the video today, and it's almost the exact same facial expression, so I apologize. Anyway, Western allies and Ukrainian officials are growing increasingly concerned that Belarusian troops mounting at the border will invade Ukraine to join Russian President Vladimir Putin's forces. Belarus's entry into the war could have broader implications in the Ukraine-Russia conflict, especially if Russian-commanded Belarusian troops enter through western Ukraine, amid fears that the fighting could either purposefully or unintentionally spill over the border into Poland. That's a member of NATO. Belarus's exiled opposition leader, argued Tuesday that Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko, he's the Russian puppet president that was installed, a close ally and friend of Putin, has already committed high treason by allowing thousands of Russian troops to stage in Belarusian territory before invading Ukraine. In recent days, Belarusian railway workers worked in a coordinated effort to sabotage their own railway lines to prevent the flow of supplies back to Russia or to the Russian troops in Ukraine. So, what we're being led to believe right now is Belarus is a 50-50 country, as is Georgia. Belarus is to the northwest of Ukraine. Georgia is to the southeast, catty corner. Both countries had satellite state puppets installed by the Russian Federation. They also have exiled opposition leaders who are loyal with certain parts of the military, or the military's loyal to them. So you almost have like a civil war going on in all these satellite states. And it's almost as if you could say, well, if you can get your opposition to actually take over your country again, and then we, I don't know, fast track all you little states into NATO, then Russia would be fucked, wouldn't it? So that's kind of the thing that every one of these smaller countries are pushing for, because they want to get under the blanket of Article 5 protections. And yet, it's like a boys' club, right? It's like, yeah, we'll let you in, and they're not really going to do it. And then shit like this happens. Anyway, let's move on. Says I got 3 pictures left for you, which means I must have like 3 or 4 stories left for you. And this one's a good one. This one's a really good one. It is now 8:19 p.m. Moscow. And a story was written, and I'm going to preface this with something you may have seen in your local or world news about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 by now. Vladimir Putin recalled his 2 top generals. And you may have remembered seeing a picture of these 2 guys sitting at a table 30 feet away from Putin at the other end of the table. And you were like, what the hell is this? Right? Well, back then the story was Putin's paranoid. He's terrified of COVID. He doesn't want anyone to be near him. Those 2 generals were disarmed and passed by multiple checkpoints on the way to that table. They were seated first. Putin came in later at the opposite end, sat down, and began his ass chewing. And a lot of people were like, well, who are those 2 generals? Why are there only 2? Why are they so special? Well, now there's only 1. That's right. Take a look. Those are the 2 guys. The one I circled for you. The head of Russia's Ministry of Defense, a man by the name of Sergei Shoigu, has not been seen in the public eye for 12 days and is now reportedly missing, according to reports and messages circulated on Russia's Telegram Wednesday, today. Investigative journalists from the Russian independent news outlets Media Zona and Agentstvo claimed on Wednesday that the normally media-savvy Shoigu, he's a camera whore, has not appeared in public since March 11th. There are rumors that Shoigu is either in poor health and is experiencing heart problems, while other messages are swirling around suggesting that Shoigu might have been fired from the ministry or is even on house arrest, according to other Russian journalists. Shoigu was last seen in public on March 11th, presenting awards to Russian troops occupying Ukraine during what Russian President Vladimir Putin called a special military operation, but what the West has condemned as a full-scale invasion of the sovereign nation of Ukraine. What if the awards, the medals he was handing out, were made out of, I don't know, uranium? And he's got, I don't know, radiation sickness. I don't know. All I know is this guy's been disappeared. He's been missing for 12 days. He's a camera whore. You take a camera away from a camera whore for more than 12 seconds, and they're like, oh my god, I'm gonna die. This guy could actually be dead. We don't know. So he would make one of the biggest pieces to fall. So far, we have 7. 5 generals, one being a Chechen, one battlefield in theater colonel, one deputy admiral of the Black Sea Fleet. Oh, and I don't know if you noticed this, but if you look on the scroller at the bottom, they got another boat. So we're up to 4.
Mhm.
Probably sailed into a mine or something. Anyway, Shoigu, MIA. Maybe KIA. Moving right along. About an hour ago, or about after that, this picture scares me. I'm going to show you anyway. There you go. You guys remember the movie 30 Days of Night? It's that stupid horror movie up in like Prudhoe Bay, Alaska or something. And like the vampire-like things have pure black eyes because they're like demons or something. Doesn't Anthony Blinken have those eyes in that picture? I'm gonna have nightmares of that. The only thing he's missing are those really sharp teeth. And that scares me. Like, that guy is scary looking in that photo. I can't stop looking at it. Anyway, 3:21 p.m. Eastern Time, Washington, D.C. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, him, that soulless monster with black eyes right there, is officially calling the actions by certain members of Russia's forces in Ukraine war crimes. Blinken's comments come nearly a week after he and President Biden said that they personally believe that Russian President Vladimir Putin is a war criminal. Today, I can announce that based on the information currently available, the U.S. government assesses that members of Russia's forces have committed war crimes in Ukraine. Since launching his unprovoked and unjust war of choice, Russian President Vladimir Putin has unleashed unrelenting violence that has caused the death and destruction of multitudes of people across Ukraine. He said on Wednesday that the U.S. government assessment of war crimes being committed comes after a careful review of information from public and intelligence sources, stating that the United States would continue to track reports of war crimes. Okay, so you're saying that they're happening, and now the world is going to go, so what are you going to do about it? Don't worry, we'll get to that. I think I have a story at the very end of the show for that. Around the same time, but we're going to travel across the world again, and it's 9:22 p.m. in Moscow. So it was only like a minute after the other story, the previous one. Nestle, you know, like Nestle Quick and all them, they finally get the message. Nestle said Wednesday it will finally halt the sale of several non-essential products, including Kit Kat candy bars and Nesquik chocolate mix in Russia, in an unprecedented move amid world pressure from the other world's top consumer goods companies, after criticism from Vladimir Zelensky. Nestle shares dropped 1.3% Wednesday after hitting a session low earlier in the week. They just kept sinking. The statement was unusual for the maker of Maggi Bullion and Nescafe coffee, which has for decades continued to operate in war zones around the world. The brands Nestle is suspending make up the vast majority of all volume and sales in Russia, which had totaled 1.82 billion in 2021. That's a lot of coffee and sugar. Production of these items will also come to a screeching halt. Now, if you didn't know, last week, we kept posting the different companies that were pulling out of Russia, and Nestle very stubbornly refused to do it. And so, this is one of those few times where cancel culture actually served a purpose. They were like, oh, okay, so you don't want to stop selling to the Russians? Fine. We'll just tell the world that you want to do business with the Russians. And so they did. And everyone started selling off their stock. Or they started trolling Nestle's social media. And apparently, after a couple of days of solid losses on their stock, They finally said, hey, we're losing more this way than just pulling out of the Russian market. We should just pull out of the Russian market so we end up smelling like roses. Sorry, the damage has been done. Like, you're going to suffer for weeks now because of this. Your inaction when you should have just stopped it the day everyone else did. But hey, live and learn, right? I mean, it only cost you a couple $1 billion. All right, moving on. And you're probably going to notice something with this girl's eye. I noticed that's the first thing I saw too. Just bear with it. Here you go. 3:22 p.m. Central Time. Tennessee became the first state to receive child cancer patients from Ukraine amid the Russian invasion. Our promise to children with catastrophic diseases extends around the globe, and we are honored to play a part in helping these families move to safety to continue their child's treatment. This is from St. Jude's president and CEO, James R. Downing. 4 children and their families have arrived Tuesday at St. Jude's Children's Hospital in Memphis, the first U.S. hospital to take in Ukrainian patients. The children's ages range from 9 months to 9 years old. The children and their families traveled abroad. Sorry, I did get that right the first time. The children and their families traveled aboard a U.S. government-operated medical transport aircraft from Krakow, Poland, where more than 2 million Ukrainian refugees are currently residing. The children will receive intensive medical care alongside cancer treatment, including trauma-informed psychosocial therapy to address psychosocial, social, emotional, and cultural needs. Basically, a bunch of Dr. Sidney Friedmans are going to be on hand to talk to the kids about, it's okay, sweetie, it's not your fault. There's just bad people out there, and now you don't have to deal with them anymore. You're here. Welcome to America. Have a burger. All right, so I think that concludes the pictures part. And, oh yeah, so this is to build off that Blinken thing. 5:24 p.m. Eastern Time, so we're wrapping up the day in Washington, D.C. The U.S. government on Wednesday officially declared that Russian forces have committed war crimes in Ukraine, but could not and would not confirm whether Russian President Vladimir Putin would ever be held accountable. Let me read that again. The U.S. government on Wednesday officially declared that Russian forces have committed war crimes in Ukraine, but could not and would not confirm whether Russian President Vladimir Putin would be held accountable. We've been shocked by images of Russian forces and strikes hitting civilian sites in Mariupol, including the maternity hospital, a museum, and an art school. The United Nations and other critical observers have confirmed hundreds of civilian deaths, and we believe that the exact civilian death toll will be in the thousands. This came from U.S. Ambassador at Large for Global Criminal Justice, Beth von Schack. I think it's Schack. There's 2 A's. The ambassador's comments came just moments after Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced that the department had formally assessed that Russian forces had committed war crimes. So what they're saying is that this is going to be a half-finished war. Half-assed, half-finished war. Just like every conflict we've been in since 1950. See, this is why we don't win wars anymore. Because we don't finish the job. Now, we're not involved in this specifically. But. Yet. Thank you. You may have heard me say this several times before. And I'm going to keep banging this drum. Because I want an answer. And I'm not getting one. And it's pissing me off. Because I'm even talking to, like, the offices of Dan Crenshaw. And I'm talking to the offices of Ted Cruz. And I'm talking to the offices of Troy Nehls, my former county judge, county sheriff, who is now congressman, who I actually have a meeting with, I think in the next, 30 days. He's coming back, and I get to bend his ear a bit. But, if the Ukrainians manage to push the Russians back across the Russian border and reclaim Crimea and take back Donetsk and Luhansk, the war's only half over. You see, the problem is you've defeated Putin's army. But Putin is still out there. And he's still alive. And he's still wealthy. Now, he can't spend his money anywhere else, but he's still wealthy. He can buy whatever he wants underground, dark money style, right? He can fence that money in shell companies if he has to. He's not an idiot. He's not a good tactician, but he's not an idiot either. He's an asshole, but he's not an idiot. He's a retard, but he's not an idiot. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, the point is, this war doesn't end until he's on the end of a rope, or he's tied to a post with 6 bullet holes in his chest. Then this ends, because he's the last piece of the Soviet Union. This isn't the Russian people's fault. It's Putin's fault. And he has people who are either scared of him or depend on him for their very livelihood because they have nothing else to choose from. And yeah.
Or both.
Or both. And some of the top leaders, sure, okay, they're FSB and KGB goons. They can go hang with him, fine. But like, you have to think about the majority of people in that military right now. The ones that are like Benjamin Franklin Pierce, and I know I've been using a lot of like television references. They're just stuck there. Draftees. They don't want to be there. They weren't even told they were going to be there. They were lied to get there. This is just a training exercise. It'll be great. You get to camp out around the Ukraine. The weather's better down there anyway. Uh-huh. Then one day, oh, cross the border and start shooting everybody you see that's not one of your guys. Huh? What? Don't question it or you'll disappear like the rest of them. What? Anyway, that's when the war ends. This is such a unique part of history. You can end the Soviet Union forever the day you take out Vladimir Putin. End it. You can actually have Medvedev arrested too, because he's just a Putin lackey. Now, if you put Navalny in power, he might be able to turn that country around. He seems trustworthy. He seems to be a very, very vocal capitalist. Very anti-Russia. Or sorry, very anti-USSR Soviet Union Russia. He might be the best chance that they've got. Oops, sorry about that.
You mean very pro-democracy?
Yes, and that's kind of what we're in the business of, isn't it? We're going to free the shit out of you as the bombs fall. So, you know, I said this yesterday. I'm like, hey, I guess there's just no possibility of us busting him out of jail like they did for Mussolini. Probably not, but, you know, whatever. Anyway, let's move on. Let's see. About an hour goes by, and it is 6:26 p.m. in New York City. China was the only country to join Russia in the UN Security Council, voting for a Russian draft resolution declaring the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine. Russia and China were the only 2 countries to vote in favor of the Russian-led effort, with the other 13 countries abstaining from the vote. The draft resolution faced criticism because it did not mention Russia's involvement in the humanitarian situation in Ukraine. Shocker.
You mean causing the humanitarian
Exactly. Exactly. Like, the Russians and the Chinese... Now, remember this, okay? This is what the UN does. How many of you had an early doctor's appointment? Early. I'm talking like 8 a.m., right? So, first of all...
The UN does something? I thought they just sucked up money arbitrarily.
They do, but this is where they're going to use it. Like, I got an analogy. You're going to love this. So, you have to get up early, earlier than usual. Like, let's say you have to get up at 5. And then you got to get dressed, and then you got to take a shower, and then you got to get all your particulars in order. Then you got to find your paperwork and your prescriptions and your freaking health insurance card and all this bullshit, right? And then you got to drive to a hospital, which may be in the downtown of your area, which means you got to drive through rush hour traffic to go to someplace other than work. And it's a place you don't go to on the regular, so it's a little bit of an unfamiliar commute. You don't know how the traffic is in certain streets over there, potholes and bullshit, right? And you get there just in the nick of time after being fleeced for like $17 to park in downtown. I'm not bitter. Anyway, you walk in and you're like, oh my God, I got 1 minute to spare. You go straight to the desk and you go straight up to these two girls that are behind the glass and they're gabbing away like two hens. And you're like, excuse me. And they look at you like you're fucking scum for interrupting whatever the fuck they were talking about. And you're like, I've got an appointment in one. They just slide a little thing over and say, sign in, please. And they slam the glass shut. We'll call you when you're ready. So you're like, uh-huh, okay. So you grab this stupid clipboard, and now you're sitting in this uncomfortable ass chair, listening to Muzak, probably with the View on the fucking TV, watching those old hens cackle away like a bunch of retards. And you're filling out this thing. And your appointment time is now 20 minutes past. But it's fine because you made it in time, right? And you get ready to go over there and you slide the glass open to hand them back their clipboard. And what are those two hens behind the desk doing? They're talking about ordering lunch at 8:20 a.m. They've got takeout menus across their desk. And they're talking about lunch. That scenario is what you witness at almost every UN Security Council meeting. They all get together, they all cackle like a bunch of hens, and they vote on the stupidest shit. Like, we should vote on a resolution right now to say Russia is bad. And like everyone looks at each other and goes, they have a look on their face like, what the fuck? But then all of a sudden they go, yeah, it's a great idea. Let's do it. So they vote unanimously, except for China and Russia. So it's like 13-2, right? And they're like, cool, resolution passed. Russia is bad. Now let's go to lunch. And they fuck off the rest of the day. That's what they did here today. Except this time it was the Russians that did it. They were like, we should have a resolution declaring a humanitarian crisis in Ukraine. And they didn't even mention that they were the cause of it. And China was like, yeah, well, I'm for it. And everyone else is like, the fuck is wrong with you two? Nay. So it shot down 13-2. Sorry, you're right. The UN sucks up money. They waste their time, and then they eat fancy lunches. That's what they do. And then they all hop in their little Volvos and their little fucking Audis, and they drive off to their fucking 6-figure apartment per month on the Lower East Side, looking at all the scum at street level that aren't as good enough, to live up there like they do. And their internet works, and they don't have to worry about their parking space. They don't have to walk. They don't have to take public transportation. All they got to do is think about how they're going to waste another $20 trillion next week and what they're going to have for lunch the next day. That's what they do. They're just a bunch of penguins. Anyway, I'm not bitter. That's a club you want to be in, so you can have all those fancy frog raw dinners too. I don't like that goose liver shit. You keep that away from me. Bone-in ribeye, taters, I'm happy. All right. Let's see, where did I leave off? Okay. Second to last story. So now, I'm home from work. It's 5:32 p.m. And the first thing I noticed is, I don't have a fence around my house anymore. What the fuck is going on? I hope my dogs didn't get out again. Because, well, I know some of you know what happened last time. Come to find out that my dad dealt me a solid. He paid a guy to replace my fence. Cool, thanks. So it's 12:32 a.m. Thursday, which will be day 29 for this conflict, in Finland. Support in Finland to join NATO has doubled since just 1 year ago, with the majority now voicing support for the first time since polling began back in 1984. Finnish Business and Policy Forum (EVA) has collected data twice a year for almost 40 years to track the attitudes and values, which includes politics, economics, foreign relations, the environment, and well-being. Chief among those interests remains whether Finland should join NATO. Results from the autumn 2021 poll found that only 26% of the population supported it. After following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, however, that number has skyrocketed to 60% support for NATO membership. The same percentage of Finns support taking a decision this year on the matter, so they're going to have a vote. 60%. 26 to 60% in 6 months. Maybe because they don't have Samohaya anymore. Just a thought. They don't have... What's the modern equivalent of the Swedish M30 or the Finnish M39? Like, what do they use now? That's awesome.
RK-62s.
Is that what that is? Can we?
It's basically what the Israelis cloned into a Galil.
Can we get those?
There are some here, and they are very, very sought after, and
that means very expensive.
Very pricey.
Yeah, so it's like STG 57s from Switzerland. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say they should just hurry up and let them in if they're willing to pay their own way.
You know, I've been saying the same thing for weeks now. You know, if you are a nation that has applied for NATO since 2014, like the Ukraine, right? And you know that Russia's about to kick down your door and Slav it up, then and because they're worried that you're going to join NATO, then as NATO you should be like, fuck it, let's give it to them. Like emergency vote, welcome to NATO, and then you just hold your hands up like fucking Dominic Toretto at Russia and be like, now what are you gonna do? And then just let them make the first move. Because do you think they're gonna try to take on 30 nations? They can barely get through this one. Now they didn't think they were gonna have such a hard time, but imagine how much more of a hard time their planners like Shoigu, who's now missing, would have had to sit there and tell Putin, we don't want this smoke. That's 30 nations. Half of them are nuclear powers. This is insanity. We can't do this. We should have did it. We should have put them in. We should have took Georgia in. We should have took Finland, Sweden, and Norway in immediately. And built that wall of NATO right in front of Russia. Everything he feared, we should have made it reality. Because the fact of the matter is even if you did it, it's not like you're pointing missiles at them. We're just saying, hey, look, good fences make good neighbors. And now you can't fuck with those people. But they won't fuck with you either. It's just now Big Brother's watching them we're watching them against you. It should have happened. I thought that leadership in this country was as bad as it is for a lack of common sense. But I'm beginning to learn, the older I get, that it's the same problem for world leadership. They just lack common sense. It's like,
it's not common sense.
No, they lack the common sense. Think about it. It's like, you could have protected Ukraine. No, it is. No, it's common sense. You could protect Ukraine from a war against Russia just by simply signing a charter saying you are now part of NATO. Not a single person had to die. Not a single city had to be destroyed. Because Putin would not have crossed that border. He might have fired missiles into it, sort of like how the Iranians fire into Iraq, but you wouldn't have had devastation on this scale. Because NATO wouldn't tolerate it. 1 or 2 missiles that come across and blow up a building or whatever, NATO will put up with some bullshit for sure, right? They'll be like, okay, do that again and find out what happens. And they fire another one. They're like, you really need to not fuck around and find out. And then they won't take the third shot. War plans never survive first contact with the enemy. You're absolutely correct. That they estimate their success, they estimate their losses, they estimate how much they're going to need in reinforcement, bullets, bandages, and condoms, and whatever else, booze. And then once the bullets start to fly, then the reality sets in. Oh, these guys were tougher than we thought. Or, oh, wow, this was a cakewalk. Well, they found out the former, not the latter. It's not a cakewalk. These people are brave and resilient and hardy, very hardy people. They're not defeatists. They're not Joe Biden. Anyway, I got one more story for you. Okay, 5:40 p.m. So 10 minutes after the last story-ish. It is 10:40 p.m. in the good old UK. And this is actually pretty substantial, actually, now that I think about it. The UK is set to announce a new support package to Ukraine, providing more military assistance as NATO leaders gather in Brussels to discuss a long-term strategy for the war. Vladimir Putin is already failing in Ukraine. The Ukrainian people have shown themselves to be extraordinarily brave and tenacious in defending their homeland in the face of an unprovoked onslaught. This came from UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. He's a halfie, like me, like Winston Churchill. He's half American, half British, if you didn't know. Kind of makes him interesting. We cannot and will not stand by while Russia grinds Ukraine's towns and cities into dust. The United Kingdom will work with our allies to step up military and economic support to Ukraine, strengthen our defenses as they turn the tide in this fight, he continued. 1 month into this crisis, the international community faces a choice. We can keep the flame of freedom alive in Ukraine, or risk it being snuffed out across Europe and around the world. This new £25 million package will include 6,000 new air defense missile systems, which the Ukrainian military has been very effective using against the Russian invasion. £25 million. Once upon a time, you used to be able to just go, oh, a pound's about $2. That's not the case anymore. It's about $60-ish million, though. For a country with okay, this isn't like to belittle England by any stretch, but geopolitically and economically, they're substantially smaller than us, physically, right? Economically, smaller. Not bad, just smaller. And they're going to send 6,000 air defense missile systems. That's Herculean, right? They're putting up the stuff. I mean, we're doing it too, but it's like it's still good to see it happening. You know, it's like when you see
Where do you
UN.
think they're buying those from?
I don't know if it's domestic ones or not. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the British use for anti-air. They could use Patriots. You might. I know what you're insinuating. It's just I'm not sure if it is. It's like they don't use Mark 48 ad caps.
I think they are. If it's what I think they are, I think it's called the Meteor system.
So it's domestically produced.
Yes, but the British also buy Stingers, and I'm pretty sure they do possess Patriot.
Sure.
Because let's face it, we sell all our friends the Patriot system.
Yeah, NATO ally. Absolutely. But they have national pride too, so they're like, we got this. I mean, we could have gave them Mark 48 ad caps. They were like, no thanks, we have the Spearfish and Tigerfish, and those are incredible torpedoes. In some cases, they're better than ours. In some cases, they're worse than ours. But they fill a niche that ours can't fill. And ours fill a niche that theirs can't fill. So it's kind of like, well, why don't you give us a couple of years and we'll give you a couple of ours, and then we'll just candy cane load our subs and do everything together. That's always an option.
I mean, with the whole world rushing to donate to this fucking Ukraine thing, it just reminds me of how the Taliban inherited like 80 billion in arms.
This is true.
Like Russia's gonna inherit the world's, donations.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. If they take over, and all the supplies are just sitting there in depots, then they inherit all the weapons.
Or even worse, it's all blown up and we've just essentially wasted that shit to a country that was going to fall anyways, and we just gave it like, hey, let's just throw all away too.
Which is why I think they're giving away the things that they see the Ukrainians using the most effectively. So, like, for instance, a javelin, right? You fire and forget. Bam. Fire, drop it, you're out of there, right? Those,
shoot and scoot.
Yeah, we give them tons of those. S-300s and the SA-8s, those are on trucks. So you drive in, you fire, you turn around, and you drive off. So it's fire and forget. I think the concern is if we gave them, I don't know, tanks, right? That would be a problem, because if they can't scoot those out in time, you're right, they get captured. If they get captured, they get reverse engineered. Then you end up with another Tupolev Tu-4 bomber that looks strangely like a B-29, except the fucking thing is way slower because the engines aren't as good, and it weighs a shit ton more because, you know, freedom units to metric doesn't convert, and everything had to be thicker because Russia has a size complex. Now, truth be told, you got to hand it to them. What they evolved that fucker into eventually became the Tu-95 Bear, and that's a pretty damn impressive airplane. Anyway, I know what you're saying. Even if the Ukrainians think that all is lost, they'll blow it up. Sure. But I don't think we're giving them the things that they have to worry about having to blow up. You know, the missile systems and stuff like that, those are things that they fire, forget, and move on. They can drop it and not have to worry about it. The Russians already know what we have. They already know what a javelin is. They're scared to death of it. A launcher's useless to them. Or what's left of one. I don't know. We'll see. All I know is...
Well, it's also small enough that they can cache that shit.
Yes.
In caves and
other places. Yeah. They can bury these things.
For guerrilla warfare later down the road.
Yep. No doubt about it.
And that will cause the Russians major headaches.
You know the other thing that we don't hear about much? They were handing out AKs to the civilians, right?
Yep.
Magazines, AKs, and ammo. You have to imagine that if it goes guerrilla, if it goes city fighting, street to street, how many RPG-7s are just littered in that country right now? Every fucking street corner, you're going to see these little rocket-propelled grenades go everywhere. It's going to look like fucking 4th of July. It's going to look like a fireworks factory went up. Because those people are not going to they're not going to sit down for this. Like, you're just, like, one Russian column is going to come down one street and, like, 50 RPG-7s are going to go off at once. We already saw how brilliant they are with javelins. That one column that tried to enter the north part of Kiev, and whoever planned that attack, give that man a medal, because he knocked out the front one and the back one. He had those guys with the discipline.
Oh, I know which ones you're talking about.
Yeah,
that was the Grom.
That thing was epic,
that was
dude.
Ukrainian Special Forces.
They hit the front, the back, turned it into a kill box, and wiped out everything in between in minutes. I'm like, Jesus, those guys are good.
We trained them. That's why.
Yeah, and we actually had CIA. The CIA actually admitted to as much. They were like, "Yeah, we've been training them." It's like, what are they going to do about it? Yeah, we've been training them. You've been training everybody. That's what you do. You're the CIA. Anyway, so that's the day in the war room. That's what we've got for you today.
Well, did you see the story I posted earlier, Sean?
Which?
The Ukrainians captured a top-of-the-line Russian electronic warfare unit.
Oh? What's it called?
This thing is meant... I forget what it's called. I'd have to look, because I'm not very familiar with them. But these things are meant to mess with AWACS. They're meant to even mess with, like, ground-based large radar systems. They're designed to mess with freaking spy satellites. This is top-of-the-line Russian tech, and they just took one.
So it's called Anonymous. No. Sorry.
No. It's a two-part system, and apparently for certain they captured the command and control part. You don't think there's some people at the CIA that are salivating. Like, we'll give you $50 million for that.
We paid $100 million for one S-300 system out of Belarus. $50 million drop in the bucket. I mean, they think about it this.
For the CIA?
I can't believe
to get their hands on that tech.
I can't believe I'm about to admit this. So my friend Alicia might be right. Maybe we are funneling money. Because think about it. We just passed a $1.5 trillion omnibus spending bill that supposedly will only keep this government running until October. Are you fucking kidding me? And with that, I'm going to play this. Because it's been an hour and 35 minutes. And I was trying to get you out of here in an hour, but I can't do it. I'm just not capable. I'm too damn thorough and too damn educated and way too fucking opinionated. And I didn't even have anything to drink. Anyway.
Yeah, it would have been 2 hours otherwise.
Actually, I did have 2 IPAs before dinner. But anyway, if you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're a regular here, welcome back. Either way, check out my other playlists and see if my other interests might be of interest to you. Also, keep an eye out this Sunday, because I'm already editing the next Pwnery's gun review, which I'm sure you'll probably like. This was the War Room. This was day 28. We'll see you tomorrow. Slava Ukraini, and good night.